So we have prepared 3 questions that the panel will ask. So we're going to go with the first question, each individual, starting with Mike on my far end, right end. We'll start, and then we'll move forward with them. We're giving them each 5 minutes to answer the question, and we'll end with Chief Alex. And then we'll move on to the next question. So Charlie is going to ask the first question.
Question number 1. In developing partnerships with First Nations, what did you see as a challenge and how did you overcome?
So that's a good question. The main way to attack it is to avoid all the different pitfalls that you can get in with a relationship, and there's a bit of a nuance, right? There's partnerships, which is the business construct and how we work together, but within that there are relationships, which are the key to getting these things done. And so, and I think you talked about it earlier in your talk. It's all about people. You said, we're going to keep seeing the same names over and over and over again. It's true, because these are the relationships that kind of set the foundation for things. You didn't start as timer. The first one is investment, and I don't talk about money. I'm talking about time, energy, focus. It has to go into the partnership, and it has to go into the relationship. Another one is transparency. So each partner and each party needs access so that we can understand the challenges, constraints between the groups and in the work that we do. And then the last one is respect. And a lot of times too, when we get comfortable in our relationships and in business, and at times when relationships are a bit strained, we forget that, right? So all the issues and problems that come up, and they do often, we have to address that with respect. And if we're going to put solutions in place and solve issues, the solutions have to be long-term. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I guess if I'm going to work off of what Mike says, all those key words that were discussed, he already kind of hit on most of the key words. I did want to kind of just mention, though, that when you're looking at, sitting around a table and building relationships, specifically around mining projects are some of the most complex projects in the world. And, sometimes just having a solid understanding and knowing the key issues as an operator, so those are brought forth first and foremost, can definitely help the situation, right? Nobody likes surprises, but unfortunately in the business, sometimes that does happen. And you need to be proactive, and you need to be in front of those, and you need to make sure that you are, delivering a consistent message, that, consistent, truthful message, and to help build those relationships, to help strengthen those relationships, to have trust on both sides of the table is key. And, I think if you look at it through these agreements that we have, ever changing, and it's very important that, the key direction, the relationships, the trust amongst the people that sit around the table within and in the communities is there. And, I think that as operators, it's very easy for us to get kind of trapped into what we're looking at, and sometimes we may lose sight of that bigger picture, and that's important not to do, right? We have to make sure that, anything and everything that comes in our direction, that we understand, we respect, and we're empathetic towards, other people's thoughts and processes, because there's different people around the world, and these, like I said, these projects are not easy projects. You never know where they go. They tend to grow exponentially large at times, and then others not. So, that's key for us to build those relationships and to be able to have those tough discussions, because they're going to happen. You just you have to be prepared and very respectful.
Thank you. Obviously echoing everything that my colleague said, it's always very fun to go last in these questions. All of the good answers are always taken. But I'll give a little bit more of a specific example, which is when it comes to agreements. When you're working with multiple First Nation communities, I think one of the things to recognize is that there has to be some sort of baseline of equality in what folks are getting when it comes to these agreements with proponents. But in addition to that, making sure that it is individual enough that you're actually being a partner to help realize the goals and dreams of each individual community. You know, it's not a one-size-fits-all process, and people are at different stages of their development. So it's our responsibility as proponents to really see the creativity that's coming and what's being proposed to us, and making sure that we're a good partner in actually coming to that visualization with the individual communities.
So I guess from an Indigenous or First Nation perspective, you're in our house, you are in our yards. And I don't know about you, but I would never go to your house and just walk in and be like, hey, this is my home now, and I have plans to sell that couch and that TV, and you're not gonna get any part of it. You have to ask me if the couch is important. You have to ask me if the clock is important, or the fridge, or whatever it is. And, for so much of our history in our own territories, we've not had a voice. We've been silenced, we've been pushed aside, literally, quite literally, taken off of our own lands and moved out of the way. And thankfully, that's not our reality anymore. When we look at, and I mean, just from a partner perspective, I think people are on board. We've been there before the duty to consult was triggered. We've been ready for this opportunity, and speaking from Matagami, and I think I could take the liberty of saying that for all of the Waban communities, we've been sitting and having these discussions at the chief's table and saying, this is our territory and we need to be involved, but we also need to have our say, because there's very important sites within our territories. And I think we've managed to get ahead of things before that requirement was there. We've been able to communicate effectively with any of our partners, and I know that we've reached out to anybody in the different territories and been like, hey, this is Matagami, this is so-and-so, and we have a process that you can follow, and this is what it is. So we haven't been hiding anything. We've laid it all out on how we expect to be consulted, the things that we do expect to happen, and we've taken the initiative of going out and actually approaching companies when we see them in our territory. And then, we've had people just outright, early on, just been like, we don't have to talk to you. We don't care who you are. We don't, they just not having that mind frame. I can say that now, though, we see a big shift. And I think even from our own community's perspective, we want to be a real stakeholder. Not that we aren't, but we want to be professionally represented as meaning business when it comes to any development within our territories. And for us, it's not just a company. This is our community, this is our territory, and this is a true impact to the livelihood and the lives and the social conditions within our communities. When you see all of the social conditions that are happening in Indigenous communities, for the most part, a lot of that is symptomatic of lack of access to real economic opportunity to be able to grow a healthy family, society, individual. And and I don't want to go all the way back to that, but when we signed treaties, the intention was for that wealth and growth to be there, in tandem with mainstream society or the rest of society. And, unfortunately for us, we didn't have that opportunity. And this is our time to be able to make those impacts into our community, certainly for the future generations, so that they don't have to contend with some of the harsher realities that some of us have had to see as a reality, and certainly our elders in our community have dealt with much more difficult situations. But when we're talking about opportunities, you as proponents in development in our territories are able to allow us to carry out that work for our communities, so that we're setting the course for a much healthier, First Nations within our territory. So we're happy with the relationships now that we have with proponents, and that you see that our capacity is there, and that we mean business as well. It's not just a one-sided approach. We're here with you. We want to make sure that you're benefiting and we're benefiting as well. Me good.
Hello, my name is Chief Alex Sonny Batista from Atasman First Nation, and I really don't know what to say anymore after she just spoke. But anyway, I can relate to a lot of what she said, because, at the beginning, when we first started with the mining sector and all that, I felt back then there was a lot of mistrust. And, unfortunately, we had issues to come across with the mining sector and forestry sector, and anyone that don't want to do explorations on our First Nation, we had to really address and say, hey, this is our land, this is our backyard, like Jennifer had spoken, and it's never going to change, and it won't. And we were put in this capacity now to make sure that nothing will change on it, because we're looking towards our future generations now, my grandkids, their kids. I mean, we're going to leave the legacy behind for them to follow on with you folks out there. There's going to be different folks like you guys out there. Once you guys are all gone as well, it's going to be your kids or your grandkids going to be negotiating with our kids. So we've got to hopefully, set something that's going to be good in place, that's everybody's going to achieve what they want, because I believe everybody has to prosper in this life. Everybody, it doesn't matter where we are or where we come from, but within our traditional territory, we are not going nowhere. We were born and raised here. I was raised up on a First Nation in my territory. I moved away like anybody else and had to go and work different places, but last place I lived, I was in the States, and then one day I come home, I said, well, I'm going home. I told my wife, I said, I'm going home, and I'm going home to stay now. And this is where I'm at, and I was elected as chief, and I seen the things that went on, with the mining sector as well, and I think we passed that goal now, and everybody's starting to realize that it is a good business for all to negotiate and come to good terms. I mean, we're all here as one, so thank you.
Thanks, everybody. So we're going to go through the 3 questions, and then we'll have an open question and answer forum after that. If you're writing down questions, we certainly have the mics and everything that'll be available. Okay, question number 2. The landscape of partnerships has changed. In your experience, how have you seen it historically, and where do you see it going in the future?
So we see 2 fundamental changes in that have taken, say, the last 3, 5, 7 years. It's a bit of a trend, and the trend is more towards the ownership model, right? So communities actually having skin in the game and owning part of the asset. So it's either at the asset level, or it can be at the corporate level, owning shares of a company. Long term, what's it going to look like 7, 10, and 15 years from now, right? Will we see a 100% Indigenous-owned mining company? I hope so. I think that's the holy grail, right? So can we get there? That's the end of that trend. The other one we're seeing, it's not really an awakening, but I think it's more of a realization that both partners are having, or both sides of the equation are having, and that's, we're on the same time horizon now, right? No, a mining asset has a finite life, but mining companies have to put plans in place for the long term, right? And certainly with our communities, they're thinking on a generational basis, not on what are we doing next quarter. The mine's only running for 7 years. That's great for the business, right? But what about our partnership, and the impacts you're having need to be on a generational basis. So I think, more and more, in my experience anyway, more and more communities are talking that way and going like, yeah, I appreciate your mine plan, but what are we doing long term, right? We're starting to get more flow of those kind of conversations. And then companies realizing that, even though I do have a mine plan, right, I have to put programming in place and support in place for beyond that, right? Because we are having those impacts. So those are the 2 big key ones we see moving forward.
Yeah, I think just to kind of extrapolate off what Mike said is that, we definitely want to build sustainability long beyond our projects. Our projects are not long lasting. They do leave impacts, and we want to make sure that, wherever it is that we're operating to minimize those impacts, but not only that, but to give sustainability to communities beyond the life of the project, right? So that's always been a key part of developing these agreements, and we'll continue. I'm going to shift a little bit off of what Mike was saying in terms of Lakeshore Gold was, one of the first in the community, I think, to get some of these agreements in place. And when you look at, the landscape and what the future is, Mike's made some great points, but I just think, like, when you look at individual agreements and how, people change, projects change, our operations change, and every time we change, there's impact, right? So I'd like to go back to those agreements, and it's kind of the implementation to talk about, that's one of our largest challenges is the implementations of these agreements, all the little nuances in them, and it's tough because you have to get to the table, we have to work together, and we have to make sure that these things are implemented properly. And I think, moving into the future, that'll consistently be a challenge, but those relationships, building those relationships, being proactive, understanding where your projects are going is going to be critical for the relationship, moving forward. So to me, there will definitely be a shift in the way these things go, from the first one that was created to the second one to, amendments to, there's always a lot of moving parts and everything changes. So we're going to have to adapt. We're going to have to live these documents as if they're live documents and continue to work with our Indigenous partners. And I think that's how, you build success within your organization, and you build success with your relationship with your Indigenous partners. So I don't see that coming to an end anytime soon, and I definitely do see the landscape changing. How that works out, it's left to be seen.
So I'd like to start mine with a little bit of a caveat that I'm fairly new to the proponent side. I've actually been working for First Nation communities and organizations for my entire career, so let's say about 15 years. So what I saw sort of in that aspect that has fundamentally changed was the check mark to consultation. Like what Chief Jen was talking about earlier, saying that you don't have to have these conversations, or you're just checking the box, well, we sent a letter, we've engaged, check box. And I think what we're moving into, obviously the ownership model is something that I 100% agree with, but is also an attitude shift that's coming from the proponents to actually say, what a privilege it is to be able to work and learn within your traditional territory. When you think of something like water monitoring, how cool is that we can have folks out in the ground with your elders, and we have so much scientific data, but we have now this traditional knowledge that shifts back to so much more time, and we get so much out of these relationships, and really thinking of First Nations as partners that are bringing a lot to the table in terms of knowledge, in terms of business acumen, in terms of so many different key pieces that you need to thrive as a company amongst these communities. So yeah, I think there's a different attitude shift that we're seeing that also is being integrated throughout these companies as well.
Could you reiterate the question?
Sorry, Jen, I
That's
apologize that Jen did get these questions
Yeah.
much later.
So
than,
Chief Sunny and I didn't get the questions ahead of time, so.
We're not fired, are we, Jay?
No, it's okay. You knew we could answer them. I just forgot what you said.
So the landscape of partnerships has changed. In your experience, how have you seen it historically, and where do you see it going in the future?
So historically, I don't think it's a secret to everybody here, and if you don't know, so my great-grandfather signed Treaty Number 9 on behalf of Matagami First Nation, and shortly after, he resigned because he felt that he did a great wrong. And part of that is that what was expressed to him within that document and what the reality was were two completely different things. And he felt that he had failed them because he had signed something that had set them up for nothing that was beneficial to them. We got corralled, put on a First Nation, we got removed from certain areas, the Timmins area specifically. We were moved to Kamoskosha, then to Gogama, and when the railway came in, they moved us to our current location and then flooded our lands because they allowed hydro development, and then we had to buy land. So when I was just saying that at our table, when people think that, you know, First Nations people get everything for nothing, or that old adage, not only did we not, we also bought our own land from whomever to live on, so the peninsula that we're on right now. So when you look back at, like even within my family, the people who've signed on to the treaty and what they understood it to be, and where we are now, sadly, it's taken this long to come to fruition what the intention was. And we see this as, you know, you as proponents are really helping to pave the way and where government should have been honoring our treaties. So I don't think that you comprehend it from that perspective, and I know sometimes some people think, well, we have to do these negotiations, but really what you're doing is you're helping to honor these old documents that were meant to be, that really granted Canada the ability to become a state. So, you know, yeah, you've taken that on, but to me, I view that as an opportunity. You're helping reconciliation of these old historic documents. That does not absolve the governments from their obligations. I just want to say that. But yeah, so what we're seeing is the fruition of what really was intended. Nobody in their right mind would sign an agreement and say, you know what? Take everything, go and take everything, and I'll just be here. And in fact, you can make me disadvantaged within my own territory. You know, what we're able to do now is, with our future generations, is really build them up and remove that internalized impression or opinion that they've had of themselves of not being real contenders in our own territory, not being people, you know, to now establish that dignity and respect that should be going with it. And I talk to youth in our community and even in our own family that, you know, Timmins is one of the richest areas that helped fund the creation of the country of Canada, and we've been left without, and we should want for nothing. We should want for nothing. We shouldn't see the social conditions that are in our communities. We should be seeing a much more vibrant people. So while we address those issues with our own source revenue that's coming in, we're also building that stronger generation that, you know, don't know a history that has any of that. So I know I'm talking more from the community perspective, but that's why we're having these conversations with proponents in our territory, because the impacts are very real. It's difficult to see people struggle, and especially when they lose that fight or they give up. That has an impact on all of us, and all we want to see is the prosperity and success of our people. And that's where I see these agreements. And yes, I do agree with, you know, the First Nation ownership and all of that stuff. That is our trajectory. I don't think we've made it any secret in any capacity, but also right now is the time for us to really showcase to our future generations that our capacity is there and the only place to go is up, while we're also addressing the social issues that have unfortunately become symptomatic of the oppressive kind of institutional impacts to our people. Miigwech.
Yeah, maybe, eh?
Sonny's like, ditto.
Yeah, well, you know, like we talk about going back in the past again there, you know, from starting with the IBAs as well, you know, it was a long process to go through, and, you know, we had a good team, and we had a good leadership as well, too, from the Waban Tribal Council, which helped us flourish in that, and things got a lot quicker and a lot easier as well. And, you know, there was a lot of animosity as well with, you know, different companies, because we were expanding. Like, you look at our businesses now, they're really flourishing. Look at even last night, they won that award. I mean, we're in there now. And I think the future for our people and our generation and our grandkids, again, it's, it looks promising. And without the help of everybody that's in the mining sector, that mean the companies, exploration companies, whoever, they got to recognize our rights and that we are not leaving, like I said earlier, and we just got to come to common ground on what we want and to negotiate truthfully and peacefully and, and proceed with our goals in life. Because we all have goals, what we want to do. We all want to see the best for our communities. I mean, we're all striving right now. We just finished up with a new medical facility, so pretty much, on our own revenue. And I must say, too, I got to say thanks in public for Agnico or KL Gold back time who gave us quite a big donation as well towards our thing. But I mean, that was a part, of the recognition of the mining sector, which was great. I mean, they're rich, help us out as well. So thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Third question. What advice would you give to someone interested in creating a partnership with a First Nation?
I think the most powerful one for us is invest the time and energy in the relationship. I have a funny story. I was sitting in a restaurant in London in a past life with our CEO, and I'm having a conversation with him. And in the middle of it, he's got his phone out and he's texting, right? And I'm just, he's a CEO, he's busy. And I was a lot younger and a lot more aggressive than I am now. And I kind of got annoyed with it. And I'm going like, who can be more important than me when we're having this conversation? And he looks at me and he goes, this is the chief, and he will always be more important than you. So just think about how much time and energy he put into that relationship, being a CEO of a large company where he can text with the chief, right? Easy and open communication back and forth. That is magic when you can get it to that level. And the other one for us, and I think kind of following on from that story, is the relationship is much more valuable than the work, right? There's the work that we do every day. We can't let it, and I guess it's part of any relationship, right? You build, it might take a decade to get to a really good level of trust, but one email can unwind, right? Or one conversation or one thing that you shouldn't have said can unwind that back years. And so it's something that we've got to be conscious about. So a relationship is much more valuable than any of the work or any money or anything else.
Yeah, totally understand that portion of it and agree with it. I'm going to say because it's the right thing to do. It's a simple answer. It's the right thing to do. Building relationships, being open about your project, being transparent about your project, being proactive about your project is the way that you have to run your operations. And it's absolutely critical in terms of anybody trying to get anything off the ground that you, one, understand and identify who your partners have to be, and you just make that happen. We've heard it across the panel already. I've said it also earlier, is that these things are very complex, and it has an impact on many people, many different people, and having your Indigenous partners with you goes a long ways. Creating those relationships, sustaining those relationships, and being open is the only way you can operate and do business. So just close in saying it's the right thing to do.
Yeah, I completely agree with what my colleagues are saying up here. In addition to that, I would say early and continuous engagement is really fundamentally key. Having an understanding of what your partners are also dealing with. We're trying to move projects at the speed of light, and you're often dealing with communities who have a small staff, right? So understanding that there are competing priorities and you're not the most important person that's coming to the table all of the time, so you need to check your ego. And also just really a reminder of your responsibilities. Like, you don't just have responsibilities as a financial partner, you also have the responsibility to make sure that socioeconomic conditions are better. You're a steward of the land. And again, that you're a good, genuine, honest partner throughout the entire process who's available and committed to the communities that you're working with.
So, I mean, we're people, right? We're not a company. Our First Nations consist of people, and I think just being cognizant of that. I've had conversations with people in the past, especially, you know, with respect to the Waban communities, that we, you know, it's a privilege for companies to be able to sit with us. We're not trying to make any process difficult for people. In fact, we're going to help you map out the way, and even from our own perspective, you know, when things started, we had to do our own research and had to figure out, what are you doing, and that seems to be one of the dialogues that happen even internally for First Nation communities, is asking each other what's going on. And, you know, nothing's a secret, and the process and how we do business and negotiations. And if you don't know how, well, we can help you learn, and we can show you what we have to help you navigate that. But at the end of the day, and we say it to anybody, and certainly I just wanted to touch on to a point that Sydney had just mentioned, you know, you do have to understand that our communities, we went from doing all these social activities, and then all of a sudden the case law came, and I'm not going to kid you, at that time, I remember just our parking lot at the First Nation being full because people didn't know how to interpret the duty to consult. So we had every company in our area sitting, and I remember reaching out to, well, Sean and Jason was working in the economic side at the time, saying, hey, you know, we need to get funding to have people to do this, because I'm one counselor in the community and I also have a full-time job. I can't sit and meet with all these people. So recognizing that we've been able to build capacity, but that sometimes, especially for the mining companies, you're one of multiple companies that are sitting trying to meet with us and do stuff, and we also have other things happening. And while we're trying to build our capacity at the office to have enough people, staff, to address a lot of the issues, just having that understanding that it is quite busy. We don't also have the budgets sometimes to hire all of these professionals to have in place. So yeah, we're building our capacity though, and yeah, so I guess that's my message, would be that, you know, we are dealing with a lot of different stuff, and that you have that understanding, especially in this particular area, that it is quite busy for us. We're happy to have these opportunities to have discussions with proponents and any partners. And that's where you've seen things like our economic development entity, in particular for ours, Matagami Aki, who presented this morning, and really handing off a lot of that work to them so that we can really start making some progress moving forward. Miigwech. Yep.
Yeah, well, basically, I guess what I would recommend, or, you know, advice for anyone who wants to do any exploration in our territory or mining, you know, approach to legitimate First Nations, I mean, the peoples, because there is a lot of different entities out there where people claim that they're Aboriginal, but they ain't.
Yeah.
And we're having a big issue with that right now. So do your due diligence. I mean, our people that are registered, we're here. I mean, we're not going nowhere. We're registered by the federal government. And some of the rights out there, it's, you know, it's hoax. So anyway, it's, but other than that, you know, it's, come talk to us. Come talk to the First Nations, you know, especially within our Waban Tribal Council, because, you know, as one chief out of the 5, I mean, we all stand pretty much together. We know what we're doing on each other's territory. We help each other out when we can, and we do what we have to stand as a unit. And we've got good leadership and director, you know, especially the support that we need from the Waban Tribal Council. They're on top of things, and our crew from Attachment First Nation office, I mean, I can't say enough for our workers there, like Kayla. I mean, she's right on top of things. Stan, you know, one of our council, and Chester as well. I mean, you know, looking after our businesses. You know, we're flourishing. So that's what I would say, just to, be open and come talk to us. I mean, we're just people like you guys. We can sit down, go have a coffee, or do whatever we want, but have that openness, and don't be afraid. Just, you know what I mean? Thank you.